Hey Ravens fans, the draft is just a couple of days away and we're here with Director of College Scouting Joe Hortiz. Myself and Ryan Mink are going to fire away some questions at him to get a head start on what this draft process is going to look like. The way we'll start this off, Joe, is we've got 8 guys listed here and we want to get some rapid fire responses, scouting reports from you on these players. These are all guys who have been linked to the Ravens at mock drafts at some point throughout the process. So you ready?
Sure.
All right, we'll start with Peter Konz from Wisconsin.
Big center, really tall for the position. If you relate him to the rest of the guys in the draft this year, smart kid. He's been consistent for him for 3 years. He's dealt with some injury issues over the past 2 years, but he's overcome. He came back from a dislocated ankle to play in the bowl game, which I thought was impressive and showed a lot of toughness. So a quality player. He's probably going to be a 10-year type pro.
Mm-hmm. How about Dante Hightower?
Dante Hightower, explosive guy. Even though he's from Alabama, he's a good player. He's fun to watch. He's versatile. They play him inside. He's played both inside positions in his career at Alabama, and they also use him as a rush backer on third downs, where he shows the ability to rush the passer. So very versatile. He can drop in coverage. He can work over tight ends, and he can put heat on the quarterback from a three-point stance. So talented guy who's helped lead that team to 2 national titles.
Here's another one of Ozzy's Alabama guys, Courtney Upshaw.
Yeah, and part of the package there. This guy's explosive as can be off the edge. Very strong hands. Not a big guy. He's built kind of like the outside linebackers up there at Pittsburgh. He's only about a little under 6'2", but he's got pretty good length in his arms. Not real long, but long enough. Really heavy hands. When he hits tackles and tight end, he abuses tight ends, and when he hits tackles, they go back, and really got a knack for getting to the quarterback.
And we'll keep it rolling with the Roll Tide. Mark Barron.
Yeah, Mark Barron. Versatile safety. He's played high earlier in his career. They played him more in the box this year. Does a lot of things for them. He even lines up as a linebacker in dime and nickel packages. Willing to mix it up. He will hit you. He knocks guys backwards. Very good tackler, but he's also got a lot of pick production in his career. Not a lot this year because of the way they used him, but in the past he's been able to ball hawk from the back end. So he's a talented player who's got flexibility high and low, which is what we like in safeties.
Another guy rising up the board, Harrison Smith out of Notre Dame.
Yeah, Harrison's kind of popped up lately in some mock drafts in the first round. He's been a steady player for Notre Dame throughout his career. Very consistent. He's got his hands on a lot of balls, just didn't finish a lot this year. But he's sound as a tackler. He comes down. He's really disciplined with his angles. Attacks the ball carriers with good leverage. Finishes tackles, and then he can make plays on the balls. He just hasn't made them this year in terms of finishing the INTs.
How about the big boy Courtney Glen?
Courtney Glen, versatile guy. He started his career as a guard. He moved out to left tackle this year for Georgia, really out of need. They didn't have anybody out there. Threw him into the fire. He struggled a little early on against Boise. He gave up a couple sacks, but he rebounded and settled in. He's a big guy with long arms, tough to go through, tough to go around. You like his versatility. I think teams, whoever takes him, will like his ability to start him out at left tackle. If he's not quite ready there, you can move him to right, and at worst, you move him into guard.
We'll finish us off with 2 wide receivers, Michael Floyd.
Michael Floyd, big, explosive guy. You watch the film on him, what really jumps out is when he catches the ball, how he pops out of his transition. He's really explosive. He leans with the ball. He snatches it. He's really strong to the ball in the air. He makes great catches through contact. Physical player. He's like a bigger, faster version of Hines Ward in my mind. He's really aggressive versus DBs. He beats them up, as a blocker, and he's a really tough cover.
And lastly, Stephen Hill.
Stephen Hill, explosive guy, jumped on the scene in the combine in terms of in the national eye, but a guy who plays in that triple option, and so his routes are going to need work. He's going to need refinement in terms of picking up coverage, identifying when they're rolling towards him. The little intricacies of playing wide out at this level, especially coming from his offense. But the things you like about him is he can go get the ball down the field. It's hard to overthrow him. He can go get the field in a crowd, and then he blocks really well because he has to in that offense. So he's a talented player. Probably going to be the raw in terms of coming in and developing, but he's got a high upside.
We could probably play his game all day. Talking about Stephen Hill, how much do you measure a guy in terms of still being somewhat of a developmental, still kind of raw project based on the system that he played in, taking him in the first round potentially, not necessarily the 3rd or 4th round where it'd be more, I guess, acceptable to take some project kind of players? Right,
and the higher you take a project, the greater the risk is in terms of the quick payback. With guys like Steven, and it's other positions too, you can take a DN and you're projecting them to outside linebacker. When they're not familiar with doing it in such an expanded role, it's going to take some time. But I think what you do is you pay attention to what he does well on film, and you look for the ability to do the things you're going to ask him to do. The route running, can he drop his weight? Can he settle his feet? Can he explode out of the breaks? He may not do it a lot on film, but you have the combine to watch him do it, and then you have the pro day to watch him do it. And you put a little bit more weight in those, in terms of measuring him versus the film, because on the film he's going to run a lot of goes, a lot of stop routes and some drags, and his route tree is not going to be as developed, so you have to pay more attention to his ability in the workouts.
Right. Joe, I feel like we've talked about how the AFC North is a unique division. I mean, defensive, cold, things like that. When you're looking for a Ravens player to draft, do you look for a guy that fits in specifically with that division, and what does that look like? What's an AFC North player look like?
Yes, to answer your first question, we look for guys that fit, because the bottom line is if you don't win your division, there's no guarantee to be in the playoffs. So, we want to win the division. So we got to beat Pittsburgh, we got to beat Cincinnati, we got to beat Cleveland. So we're going to draft players that we feel can beat those guys. What we look for, rugged and tough, really. I mean, especially defensively. We obviously bigger, faster, stronger. That's what you want. But they always don't come in that package. And what you want is a smart, tough, instinctive guy who plays ball aggressively, who gets it, sees things quick, and can really fit in with our guys. We like leaders. Our team's full. We have a team full of leaders. We want guys that are leaders on their college football team, guys that have passion for the game. They just get it, that live and breathe it, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Ideally, you want the bigger, faster ones, but you can take a smaller one if they can play. I mean, Webby's a perfect example of that. He's a small corner, but he gets it, and he plays like a big man out there.
A couple weeks ago at the pre-draft press conference, Ozzie talked about how concussions have really changed the way that some guys are scouted, and it's become more prevalent that you're paying attention to those things. Is there anything else that has changed in recent years with the scouting process in terms of what you look at in a guy?
Well, I think just overall durability in general. I think our scouts have done a fantastic job paying it. We've always paid attention to it, but you try to break it down even further. And you just find out which guys are going to be available. Whether it's a concussion, whether it's an ankle sprain, whether it's a hamstring pull, we want guys that are going to be out there. It's a long season in the NFL, and you have to have guys that can maintain their play, whether it's through injury or through when they're hurting versus injured. So I think that's one thing we've kind of really focused on. You want to avoid the guys that are the racehorse mentality, the guys that need to be perfect to play. We use that term in the draft room. We don't like those guys. We want guys that can play a little dinged up. So concussions are important, absolutely, especially with the way football in general at all levels is paying attention to it. But it's really all injuries in general. In my mind, I think there's been a greater focus on that. It's certainly in our room and throughout the league.
Joe, what would you say is your role at this point in the process? A lot of the scouting legwork has been done. When you're in the draft room, when do you pipe up? When do you get involved?
It's our draft meetings are an open forum. If you have something to say it now. Don't wait till draft day, because on draft day it's done. The hay is in the barn. The list is made. There's no debate on the players we're going to take. Eric and Ozzie have the list, and they'll make the right decision on the player based on what we've said going into it. So my role is to evaluate all the players that we consider draftable, and I've done pretty much all of them at this point. I got a couple stragglers I'm doing and cleaning up. And then I'm making phone calls and finding out just any more information I can get, whether it's on a player, where he's been, what teams are interested in what guys, just any bit of information you can bring, and then, like I said, just finishing up the evaluation process. But I think everyone in that meeting does a great job. Coaches, scouts, whoever, our personnel assistants, they're with these kids in the vans, shuttling them back and forth when we bring them in for a visit. And they'll pipe up and say, hey, I didn't like this guy. I think he'll have a hard time fitting in the locker room. Any information you can bring to help us get the best player is valuable to us.
How much do you study what other teams are going to do, and how do you go about finding that information out? Because everybody obviously is holding the cards close to the chest.
Sure. We try. A lot of teams try, and some are successful. Some are more successful than others. And inevitably, guys are going to get out where they've been. Twitter is a great way to find out where guys are going, because guys are tweeting pictures from the locker rooms they've been in, and because they go in and take pictures of so-and-so's locker, you know, and they're on their visit. And next thing you know, they're posting it on their Twitter or Facebook page and saying, this is where I've been today. And so you find the agents will talk. The players, when you get them here, you can say, hey, where else you been? You get that information from. You know, it's good to have on draft day, you know, because you can sit there and say, hey, we're targeting this guy. This is who we're hoping falls to us. And as he's getting closer, you look at the teams that are ahead of you and say, hey, I don't think they're going to bring him in. I don't think they're going to pick him. The corner's not a need or wideout's not a need, and they haven't brought him in to visit. Now, that's not to say they're not going to take him, but if they brought him in, then you worry, you know, a little bit more than if they didn't bring him in.
And to wrap things up, you know, in just a couple of days, you're going to be in the draft room going through the process. For somebody who's never been in there, what is that room like? Do emotions flare up? What's the atmosphere like during that time?
You know, it depends where you're picking. You know, when you're picking at 29 late in the draft, it's slow early. Yeah. You know, it's more just sit back and enjoy the show. We do a lot of prep work during the day that morning. We have meetings with Steve and Dick, along with John and Ozzie and George and Vince and myself and Eric. And, you know, we go through the philosophy and our plans, and then you just kind of sit it out and wait it out. You talk to some other scouts, talk to some other guys throughout the league, you know, just chat with them. And then you wait, and as you get closer, the momentum builds. And not a lot of debating going on. You're waiting to see who's going to be there. And you got your 5 guys left, and all right, we're 10 picks away. Hopefully one of these 5 guys will get to us. And when they get picked, you cross them off, and just the anxiety builds. And hopefully when we're up, one of our guys is still there that we want to take, and we pull the trigger. If not, you know, we're always listening to offers to move back. And Ozzie, if there's a guy he really wants, will make the decision to go up and get a guy. But in terms of debating, there's not a lot of like, hey, we need to take this guy. The decision's already been made before the day kicks off. So.
Well, I know I'm sure it'll be a little bit of a stressful atmosphere, but it's a very busy time for you. So thank you very much for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us today.